Welcome. Thank you so much for being here with me today. My name is Jessica White, and this is going to be choice overload and charitable giving. Going to be too much of a good thing. And I just want to say thank you, Dr. Malmstrom, for being my discussant. First thing is classical choice theory suggests that more choices are always better, right? We like, more choices lead to better match utility, better utility preferences, stronger satisfaction because you have some decision freedom. But what we find in real life is stronger is not always actually better, or not stronger, I'm sorry, more is not always actually better. And this is sometimes due to the fact that we have higher cognitive costs, which are a real thing, as well as it can inflate expectations about finding ideal options through preference matching. You know, having more options, you have this ideal, and in reality, you might not actually find that, and that's a problem. And so what they coined this, Yenger and Lepper in 2000, with this idea of what we call choice overload. And there's two kind of main architectures, if you will, about what choice overload is. One of them is the idea of subjective states and feelings, which would be, for example, being less confident, having post-decision regret, greater unhappiness, which is more of an, psychological idea than economics, but and then also having behavioral outcomes such as changing your consumer actions in general, going with some default option, even if it's not the best option, but it's just the default, choice reversal, and then less likely to display preferences for larger choice sets and assortments, and actually liking smaller choice sets. With that, the motivation then for my paper is, does this choice overload that we find in a consumer setting a lot, does it also apply to an altruistic setting? And so I'm looking for the manner through which choice overload influences charitable giving in general. And it's not been a very well theoretically explored mechanism as well. I am actually trying to build a model to capture my results, which I can talk about a little bit at the end if I have time. But in the idea is that, again, does altruistic environment have a different impact on choice overload? Because inevitably we, treat consumption differently than we might treat altruistic motives. And then I'm also going to look at some other personality traits that are super fascinating as well that I capture, including locus of control, TIPI, and GPS, which I'll talk about momentarily. So what is altruism? Altruism and pure altruism is usually what we talk about now when we talk about charitable giving, mainly because pure altruism from War in 1982 found that pure altruism is usually crowded out by other people's giving or government giving. And so inevitably, what is charitable giving then? Why do we give still if you're telling me that it's going to be completely crowded out? Well, it's because of what Andreoni said in 1989 in his paper with the idea of a warm glow. And so inevitably, what it should be is that we actually have this utility that we get from giving ourselves, right? And so it's impure in the fact that we are getting some utility. It's not purely just that we're helping the puppies. It's that we're helping the puppies because I want to help the puppies myself and get some warm glow from helping the puppies. And so warm glow, why do we, more about it is just that we, there's some self-satisfaction. You can feel moral for doing it. It alleviates some cognitive dissonance, right? You could avoid shame and scorn. And then there's also potentially some social pressure to donate as well. So quickly for literature review for choice overload, Yenger and Lepper in 2000 found that jams, jellies, and chocolates and essays, they did 6 over a 24 or 30 choice set option and found that people try and bought more jams and jellies when they were just 6 instead of the 20 plus options. And then essays, evidently for college kids, they only wanted 6 essays instead of the 30 option. Behene et al. Found that they actually looked at a meta-analysis and found that preconditions for overload, which is what I'll talk a little bit about in a second, but the idea that there's, got to be a specific environment set up for choice overload. Choice overload isn't always going to present itself under just every circumstance, but these preconditions, if they're there, that will set up the proper environment for choice overload. They found no preconditions. Versus Chernev et al., they kind of did a rebuttal paper where they looked at it again. And again, this is all under consumer behavior, but Chernev did find preconditions. And then Kammerer et al. Found a really cool paper on functional MRI, and they looked at the highest brain activity happens under a 12-item set. So evidently that's kind of the best option. The literature review for charitable giving, on the other hand, specifically for charitable giving and the idea of choice overload is what I'm talking about here. The Shai-Behene et al. Paper in 2009 said they found no overload effect when they looked at charitable giving with, for example, it was small versus less known charities. And then they looked at large and well-known charities, and they looked at different choice sets, and they found no choice overload to exist at all, except when you had to justify your answer. So when you had to write something down and say, well, this is why I decided to pick this charity. Sawyer and Hogarth increased donation amounts. So they actually just found an increase in donation amounts from 3 to 16. Schultz found that when you actually offer a default list versus no list at all and say, hey, just pick something or think of something off the top of your head, you double the donations and the revenue. And then Carroll et al. Actually found, they did find decision difficulty, right? So some kind of choice overload existing with deferment under a volunteering charitable giving, where you're volunteering your time instead of money, which is pretty fascinating. So my preview of my results quickly, list 35, so my medium-sized list, I actually found fewer donation, let me clarify, sorry, fewer donations in terms of people choosing to donate. Between that versus my 5 and 100 list, I found no difference. So I ended up getting this kind of interesting U shape. There is no argument on my intensive margin, which is my donated amounts though, but I'll address that as well. Agreeableness, which is a big trait, which I'll talk about in a second, had a strong positive effect. Time preference was also a very kind of interesting positive effect. And I had a locus of control interaction with my medium list size, and found that actually had a really strong positive effect on donating as well. And again, this is meaning choice to donate on my extensive margin. So my two behavioral hypotheses are originally, again, coming from the choice overload literature, is that the fraction of subjects who donate will be decreasing in list size. So, once you have that choice overload, it happens and you just choose to donate less. And then on the intensive margin, you're also going to donate less amount as well. For my experimental design, this was at University of Arkansas from April 2019 to April 2020. It was an online survey via Qualtrics, and I sent it to staff members of University of Arkansas, mainly because I believe they have a higher propensity to donate due to higher incomes usually than majority of undergraduates. I was able to get 156 participants. I wish I got more, but I tried. They earned $7 and potentially could donate up to their $7, right? So they got $7 from completing the survey, and they could donate up to all that $7 in $1 increments. And then it was about 10.5 minutes on average to complete. And I did send real checks to real charities when they picked their charity, and they got the tax receipt information. It also had, I had 3 treatments. I had lists 5, 35, and 100. And at first I asked them, and I'll show you the question in 2 seconds, but I did ask them, what would you, if you could pick a charity type, if you would like to see charities to donate to, what type of charities would you like to donate to? And so I ended up breaking them down into 6 charity types, which I'll show you in a second. But then after I asked that one question, I moved right into big 5 personality personality traits, which include extroversion, agreeableness, conscientiousness, emotional stability, and openness. And this is from a scale from 1 to 10. And then, oh, I'm sorry, 1 to 7. And then the next was global preference surveys, which was altruism, negative reciprocity, risk beliefs, and time preferences, which was from 0 to 10. And then a locus of control. And locus of control is how much luck influences your life instead of your effort. And so if you're more internal in your locus of control, then you believe more that your effort impacts your where you are in life, and it's less fatalistic than more external people. And that was a range from 4 to 16. Where did I get my charities from? I got my charities from the CFC, the Combined Federal Campaign of 2017. This was a list of 2,057 charities total, and it's an authorized workplace solicitation on behalf of charitable organizations. I coded all of them, all the charities. I went through each of them and coded them into what I thought were the best bins, such as animal, arts and culture, education, environmental, healthcare, and then an international NGO / disaster relief. Obviously, some of them, sat on top of it, kind of were muddled, but I picked what I thought from the mission statement was the most obvious bin it belonged in. I also gave the mission statements from the CFC website, and in the actual question, I had a link to the CFC website as well, so they could check the validity of this to make sure I was, there was some more trust in what I was showing them. And one of the big things I did was I had not just well-known charities in my list sizes. My lists were truncated from each other. So for example, the 5 was truncated from the 35, which was truncated from the 100. So they were all the same list, just again, smaller versions of the same. I did not have big well-known charities. It was not alphabetized and it was completely randomized. And I did that in order to not just have some kind of anchoring. Right? It wasn't just like, oh, it's Red Cross, boom, don't even have to look. It's just a big charity. So the first 5 lists for all of them were mainly not well-known big charities. So for example, this was my first question I asked on the survey. At the end of the survey, you'll see an opportunity to be able to donate, which of these would you like? So once they picked this, they only saw that. So if they were really into environmental related charities, that's the only charity type I did. I did this partially as well, also to try to get away from any indifference, right? If I just had random 5 charities, just that completely random, people might just not care. And that's why they're not donating. So I tried to get away a little bit from that. And that was actually per Dr. Sherry Lee's advice. So thank you for that. And then, so this would be a screenshot of my 5 list for animal charities. So as you see, again, I don't believe they're, really huge, well-known charities. And the boxes next to it were how much they could donate if they wanted to, up to $1, dollar increments, they could fill it in. And then of course, there was always a choose not to donate option at the top. So quickly, descriptive statistics, just to show you, this is kind of showing the different treatments. This is my dependent variable with the choice to donate on the extensive margin at a 65% amount of people donated in list 5, 47, and then went back up to 63, which is this kind of interesting U shape I'm talking about. And then on the intensive margin, I did have a lower donation amount. You can see in list 35, which is $3.18, they donated on average. But there was no statistical significance kind of behind any of this. So this is why, I end up rejecting my behavioral hypothesis number 2. These are just some more.
Yes, I'm sorry to interrupt. So just to clarify, is remind us, this is a within design or between design?
This is a between design, right? That's the one way. It's just per individual per individual. So it was just, there was no, that's what I'm looking for. There was no, I'm sorry, I'm blanking. There was no, it was one person, they sat down, they did it themselves. There was no, like any kind of group play or anything like that.
So each individual only gets to see one of the 3 lists, right?
Yes, exactly. Sorry. Yes. I'm sorry. Yeah, exactly. So it was just it was that, they did not get to switch back in between. Thank you, Dr. Lee. I should have clarified that better. I'm sorry, y'all. So my results for behavioral hypothesis number 1 is that we actually see the fraction of subjects who donate. And this is, as you can see, kind of what we saw in the descriptive statistics, this U-shaped forming. I did do a probability ratio test and found that there was a statistical significance different between the 5 and 35 list at the 5%. And so the equality of proportions who donated from the 5 to 35 was statistically different. And then I did a marginal effects and probit model on my choice to donate and my different models. And I'm sorry, it kind of says yes and no, but I had kind of a lot of numbers, so I didn't want to squeeze it all into one PowerPoint here. So, but just to kind of show you the big thing here is that we go from a 22% to 30%, you know, a significant reduction in the probability of donating relative to list 5. And it ranges from, again, from 22 to 30 percentage point decrease when you get the list 35 from the 5. Right. And then, of course, this is the one from list 100 is just showing that there wasn't much of a difference between the 5 and the 100. But there was when you went from 35 to 100, there was a statistical 21 percentage point increase in the likelihood that you donated when you had the 100 list versus the 35, which, again, was pretty fascinating for me because I was not expecting that. Quickly moving on, just to show you more, the charity types, I had a really, really big reduction in arts and culture and education. Everything else, the charity types didn't really have any impact. The baseline here is going to be our animal charities, which, you know, a lot of people like to donate, but to that, but I don't know, I had a good point from another discussion earlier from one of our professors at Arkansas who suggested maybe the education or it's a culture, maybe people were just not less likely to pick it, maybe because they're staff members at University of Arkansas, or maybe once they saw the list and saw that it wasn't University of Arkansas, you know, affiliation, they just chose not to donate. So those are good points.
Yes, sorry to interrupt again. So we got a question in chat. So what happens if you test joint hypothesis that it is equal across the 3 treatments?
Oh, good question. So like, so I found the, I'm assuming we're talking about like balance tables. If we're talking about that, I did do the balance table, showed there were equality across all of the treatments, you know, just with everything.
I think the question, if I interpret the question correctly, it's a treatment effects.
Okay. I will have to look at that. I don't know. I didn't do any joint test. Sorry, guys. I can't see where the chat thing is. I see it there, but it's hard to, sorry. I can't like pop it up to see what the question is itself. So quickly, just for time reasons, GPS, I did find agreeableness did have a positive impact across the model, the different models, which is actually pretty interesting because due to psychological reasons, there is a lot of prior research in psychology that shows that agreeableness does have a positive impact, and it is probably the core dispositional trait on why people choose to donate. Other things, very quickly, the time preference is positive. This has also been shown in prior research that being more patient, and this also might help with the explanation of search, as well as altruism. Of course, this is almost maybe a priming effect, right? Where people, of course, if you say you're altruistic, hopefully you show you're altruistic as well by doing that. And then finally, what's kind of fascinating here very quickly is that locus of control times the 35 list is very significant at 23 percentage point increase, which is fascinating at the fact that locus of control does not seem to have a uniform effect across the treatments. In this case, that it feels like when other people are more discouraged at the 35 list, being more internal will help you search through those charities, which is pretty great. And then I got some interesting impact on the agreeableness, and list 100 is negative and significantly so, which I think is pretty interesting. I'm still kind of mulling on very good reasons on why being agreeable, but having that big list size, maybe being agreeable and benevolent and warm, but having that 100 list really does cause some level of overload. So for sake of time, I'm sorry, guys, I'll just kind of go quickly. My results in terms on the intensive margin, as you can see here, here's the frequency of people who decided to donate. And so we can see that it either went 0, people didn't really donate, or they really did at $7. There wasn't much in between. So even though I do get a U shape when you see the graph here, a fraction of donated amounts, it wasn't statistically different enough to say anything. So of course, I relegated any of my discussion on hypothesis to pretty much to my appendix, because there wasn't much discussion there wasn't much results here in this case. So there's no significant difference. It was all or nothing. And finally, so having a choice size of 35 negatively impacts the choice to donate. A U-shape does emerge. The list size treatment had no impact on donated amounts. Part of my argument might be, would have this been different with more than $7? $7 is an odd number. It's not a very large number. Maybe if it was $20, people would have done some mental accounting differently, right? With their numbers, they would have been able to split up money differently, and they might have been like, oh yeah, I'll donate $10. So there might have been a better effect, because I was actually pretty close. There was significance, it was leaning that way. It just wasn't there. So maybe with more people and or more money, it would have been a little different. I think $7 is just kind of a weird number to kind of split in your head, I think. I did find, again, some really neat personality traits that back up some prior literature in psychology that do show charitable giving, which was pretty neat. And then also policy implications, maybe give small list or exhaustive list. It seems that people might either really want to search if they really want to find something. The exhaustive lists might be a lot, and they might not actually search through all 100, but, either kind of cherry pick or scroll quickly, or, give them just small lists. But 35 just seemed to, be just enough to not make people very happy. So thank you for your time, everyone.